I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am trying to make sense of what happened. My wife Lisa and I have been together for about 10 years. We met in college, got married pretty young, and for the most part I thought we had a solid if somewhat predictable life. She was never the most affectionate or easy to read, but she was always charming, confident, and, I'll admit, pretty good at hiding her darker side. We decided to spend this winter season at an exclusive resort, an escape, a break from the city. It's the kind of place where everything is pristine, polished, and meant for people who want to hide away from their real lives. I thought it'd be relaxing, maybe even romantic. But right from the start, I noticed Lisa was acting weird. She'd be dismissive when I asked about her plans, and she kept brushing off my concerns about her mood swings. She'd tell me I was overthinking, that she was just stressed. One thing that caught my attention was how secretive she was about her phone. She'd always keep it close, but now she'd hide it or lock it. When I was around, I'd catch her deleting messages, which wasn't unusual, but the way she'd do it, like she was trying to erase something important, made my stomach turn. Still, I told myself I was just paranoid. Maybe she was worried about work stuff or some minor argument. Then there was the weird coincidence with the webcams. I'd been going to physical therapy sessions after a minor back injury from skiing, and I'd noticed her spending a lot of time near the resort webcams. It wasn't just casual interest. She'd be watching certain areas, and I swear I saw her entering the cabin of a guy I'd never seen before. This guy was a professional snowboarder by the name of Tyler. I'd never heard of him before, but apparently, he's pretty big on the circuit. The thing that really set me off was the contacts. I found her phone one day, just left out on the table, and saw she'd exchanged numbers with him. Not for slope condition updates, like she claimed when I asked her about it. No, they were texting about how the snow looked, plans to meet for drinks, and checking if the cabin was okay. I mean, these messages weren't overtly dirty, but the tone was flirtatious enough to make my blood boil. And she kept insisting, every time I asked, that she was just being friendly, and that I was crazy to think anything was going on. Yeah, right. The real kicker was when I caught her sneaking out late one night. I was napping after a long day of mountain hikes, and I woke up to her slipping on her coat. She said she was going to the bathroom, but I followed her out of curiosity. I saw her get into her car, which she's not really supposed to do without telling me, and drive off toward Tyler's cabin. That's when I saw the lights flick on in his place, and I knew she was meeting him. I felt this cold rush of anger and betrayal that I couldn't even process immediately. It was like my entire world was collapsing. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I waited. I watched her come back hours later, looking flushed and kind of jittery. The next morning, I confronted her. That's when she spun her usual bullshit about how I was paranoid, that I was accusing her of something she didn't do, and that I was just jealous because she was more interesting than my boring ass. That's her favorite line lately, blame the other person for her own lies. Honestly, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The betrayal hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just about the sneaking around with some random guy. It was about the years we spent pretending everything was fine, when she was just hiding things, lying straight to my face. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so stupid. And I was furious that she thought she could get away with it, that I'd never find out. This was just the beginning, I knew that much. I had to decide what to do next. Was I going to forgive her, confront her again, or just walk away? The entire thing left me rattled, numb, and extremely angry. I'd been betrayed in the worst way, and I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again after this. After that confrontation, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and I kept replaying every moment in my head. The way she lied so effortlessly. The way she looked at me like I was some kind of obstacle. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach 1,000 times over. Part of me wanted to scream, part of me wanted to break down, but mostly I just wanted to find out the truth. I started digging through her phone when she was asleep that night. I know it's sneaky, but honestly I was desperate. I found the exchanged contacts, which I already knew about, but then I saw the messages. They weren't just casual, hey, how's the snow stuff. They were flirtatious, suggestive, even downright dirty at times. Tyler was clearly more than just her ski instructor, and I could see they'd been meeting more than I thought. The thing that cut deep was the way she described him, how hot he was, how good in bed, and that she was really enjoying her secret meetings. There were pictures too, not explicit but enough to see her smiling and leaning into him, like they were more than just friends. I felt a mixture of disgust and heartbreak. But what broke me the most was the webcam footage I found on her laptop. I had set up a little hidden camera just to see if she'd slip up again, and sure enough, it caught her leaving in the middle of the night, her getting into his cabin and them locking the door behind her. I couldn't believe she'd be so reckless, so blatantly lying right in front of me. I felt like my world was crumbling. I kept quiet for a few days. I didn't say a word. Part of me wanted to gather more evidence, part of me just couldn't believe I was in this situation. Every time I saw her, I felt this cold detachment grow inside of me. My mind kept racing. How long had this been going on? How deep did her betrayal go? Was I just some fool she was using? I kept asking myself if I should just cut her loose or try to save what little was left of us. But honestly, deep down, I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. One night, I finally decided I'd had enough. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I called her into the living room calmly, but with a cold edge in my voice. She looked surprised, maybe even a little nervous, but she tried to act like she didn't know what I was talking about. That's when I pulled out the evidence I'd collected: screenshots, webcam footage, the messages. Her expression changed instantly. She got defensive, started saying I must have misunderstood or that it was just harmless fun and that I was overreacting. She told me she loved me, that she'd never cheat, and that it was all just a stupid mistake. But I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. I felt a rage I'd never experienced before. How could she lie so blatantly? How could she betray me like this after everything we've been through? I told her I was done, that I wanted her to leave. She screamed, called me controlling, said I was jealous and insecure. She even dared to say I was overreacting and that I should just get over it because she was not some cheating slut. That's when I realized just how much she thought she could get away with, how little she cared about what I felt. The emotional blow hit me hard. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and completely shattered. I couldn't focus on work, couldn't sleep, couldn't function normally. Every moment I was haunted by the images of her sneaking out, the way she looked at Tyler, how she lied to my face. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind, so naive. It felt like a part of me was dying inside. I was furious at her, yes, but also incredibly sad because I had loved her, maybe even still wanted to believe in us. But she tore that apart with her lies and her betrayal. I was starting to realize that I'd been nothing more than a fool, holding on to a fantasy while she was out living her secret life with some snowboarder. Over the next couple of days, I tried to keep it together, but the truth was, I was struggling. Every time I saw her, I saw the woman I thought I knew turned into someone else entirely. I couldn't process the fact that she was capable of this level of deception. Every encounter I had with her was full of tension and unspoken anger. I wanted to confront her again, but part of me knew that it was pointless. The trust was gone. The woman I married was gone, replaced by someone I couldn't recognize. And I knew deep down that I'd have to decide whether to fight for my marriage or walk away for good. After that night, everything shifted. I couldn't look at Lisa the same way. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone cold and selfish who thought she could lie her way out of everything. But I wasn't about to let her get away with it without consequences. I knew I had to act, and I started formulating a plan. Not just to catch her again, but to make her regret what she'd done. I didn't want to just kick her out and forget. No, I wanted her to feel the pain of betrayal as much as I did. The first thing I did was gather more evidence. I installed a few more discreet cameras around the house, especially in the areas I suspected she'd continue to meet Tyler. I also kept a close eye on her phone, her emails, any sign of contact. Every time she left the house, I'd follow her, just to see where she was going. It was a sickening feeling, stalking her like some kind of detective, but I couldn't trust her anymore. I needed to know exactly how deep this went, and I was determined to catch her red-handed again. Meanwhile, I started preparing myself emotionally. I knew whatever I was going to do, it had to be cold, calculated, and final. I couldn't let her see me break, at least not yet. I began to see how much she'd manipulated me, how she'd lied about everything. It was like she'd been playing me from the start. Every comment, every smile, every "I love you," all fake. I felt a mixture of rage and heartbreak, but I channeled it into planning her downfall. I wanted her to feel the same emptiness I'd been feeling, to understand what betrayal really meant. One day, I finally caught her in the act. I had set up a tiny camera outside Tyler's cabin, and sure enough, there she was, sneaking out in the middle of the night again, meeting him. This time, I had it all on video. Her slipping into his place, their quick whispers, her leaning in close to him like he was the only person who mattered. Watching this footage, I felt my stomach twist into knots. I'd been played for a fool, and she thought she could just go on pretending everything was fine. That moment was the turning point. I knew I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. I had to do something drastic. I waited until she returned home that night, her face flushed, her hair a little messy. I was waiting in the living room, recording her with my phone. When she saw me, her eyes widened with genuine panic. She tried to lie again, said she'd been at the spa, that she was just talking to some friends, and that I was crazy for spying on her. But I just showed her the footage. I told her I'd caught her red-handed, that I knew exactly what she'd been doing behind my back for months. Her face went pale. She tried to spin it, to blame me for not trusting her, for being paranoid, but I was done listening. What came next was a barrage of lies, tears, and anger. She said she was just bored, that Tyler was just some guy she'd met at the resort, that she never meant for it to go this far. She claimed it was just sex, that she was sorry, that she loved me but needed something more. I couldn't believe I was hearing this. How could she be so callous, so blatant? She looked me in the eyes and told me she'd never really stopped loving me, that she only met Tyler because she was trying to spice things up. Yeah, right. I saw right through her pathetic attempt at justification. I felt a surge of disgust. I told her to pack her bags, that I wasn't going to stay with someone who thought she could cheat and lie her way out of it. She kept crying, pleading, saying she'd change, that she'd never do it again. But I knew better. I knew she'd been lying all along, just waiting for the right moment to betray me further. The pain was overwhelming, but I also felt relief. Relief that I finally knew the truth, that I didn't have to keep living in this illusion anymore. That night I didn't sleep. I just sat up, staring at the wall, replaying everything. The betrayal, the lies, the way she looked at Tyler like he was some kind of god. I felt numb yet furious. I realized how much I'd been blind and naive, how I'd trusted her for so long. Now I was left picking up the pieces. I knew I had to decide whether to fight to save whatever was left of us, or to walk away and start over. But deep down, I already knew I was done. There was no coming back from this. The decision to end things was the hardest I ever had to make. After confronting Lisa with the evidence, watching her crumble and plead, I felt this strange mix of relief and deep, aching sadness. I knew I couldn't stay with her, not after all the lies, the betrayal, and the blatant disrespect she showed. But still, walking out that door, knowing I was leaving behind the woman I'd loved, was like tearing out a piece of myself. I told her to leave that night, and she didn't argue much anymore, just packed her things in a haze of tears and anger. She kept insisting she loved me, that she'd change, that she was sorry for everything, but I wasn't buying it. I'd heard enough lies. Watching her walk out, her suitcase in hand, I felt this overwhelming emptiness. I was angry at her, yes, but also devastated. I'd trusted her for so long, and she'd done nothing but lie and cheat behind my back. It felt like my entire world was falling apart, piece by piece. Over the next few days, I was in this weird limbo. I didn't want to reach out, but part of me kept thinking maybe I could salvage something from the wreckage, some kind of closure, or maybe even a second chance. But every time I thought about it, I felt sick. I realized I deserved better than someone who duped me so brutally. My friends kept telling me to just cut her out completely, to focus on myself, and honestly, that's what I did. It hurt like hell, but I knew I had to move on. During this time, I started reflecting on everything. How I'd been so blind, so trusting. How I'd ignored the signs, convinced myself she was just stressed or busy. The truth is, I was too comfortable, too scared to face the reality of what she was doing. And now I felt dumb for ever believing her lies. I also knew I needed to rebuild my confidence, remind myself that I was still a good guy, still deserving of love and honesty. I also began to piece together what her constant lying meant. She'd been living this double life for months. She'd been sneaking around with Tyler, exchanging messages, meeting him in secret and lying about everything. And every time I asked her what she was up to, she'd spin some bullshit about work or her friends. The worst part is, I genuinely believed her for a long time. I kept telling myself maybe I was overreacting, maybe I was insecure. But the evidence was irrefutable. She had been lying to my face and I'd been too blind to see it. The emotional toll hit me hard. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry at myself for being so gullible. But I also felt a strange sense of liberation. For so long, I'd been holding on to this idea of us, of what I thought we were, and now I had to let it go. It was like mourning someone who was still alive but who had become a stranger. I knew I had to find a new way forward, rebuild my life and learn to trust again, if not in her, then in myself. And that's what I started doing, small steps but steps nonetheless. I took a trip alone to clear my head, stayed off my phone, and avoided anything that reminded me of her. I started focusing on my work, reconnecting with friends, and doing things I loved, things I'd neglected while I was with her. It was painful, but I knew it was necessary. I couldn't keep living in that shadow of betrayal. I had to rebuild, even if it meant starting from nothing. Looking back, I realize how much I've learned from all this. Never to take trust for granted, never to ignore warning signs, and most importantly, never to stay in a toxic situation just because I'm scared of being alone. I still feel the sting of the betrayal, but I also know I'm stronger. And part of me is grateful. Grateful I found out when I did, before I wasted more years on someone who didn't deserve me. Moving forward, I'm not rushing into anything, but I know now what I want: honesty, loyalty, and respect. And I won't settle for less anymore. It's been a few weeks since I kicked her out, and honestly, the healing process has been brutal but necessary. Every day feels like a roller coaster. Sometimes I wake up angry, other times I feel numb and detached. I keep replaying everything, trying to understand how I missed the signs, how I let her manipulate me for so long. What hurts the most is knowing she thought she could get away with it, that her lies would hold up forever. But I refuse to be a victim of her game anymore. I've started to rebuild my sense of self, piece by piece, and it's not easy. One thing I've learned is that you can't control other people's choices, only how you respond to them. I used to believe that if I loved her enough, or if I just tried hard enough, I could fix what was broken. But this experience shattered that illusion. Some betrayals are just too deep, too destructive to fix. It's hard to accept that, but I've come to realize that forgiving doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for yourself is to walk away and protect your own peace. I've also started focusing on my mental health. I see a therapist now, which has helped me unpack a lot of my feelings: anger, sadness, confusion. I've learned to set boundaries, to recognize red flags, and most importantly, to trust my instincts. For so long, I ignored my gut because I didn't want to face the truth. Now I listen to myself more carefully. If something feels off, I don't brush it aside anymore. I confront it, I analyze it, and I make sure I don't dismiss my own feelings. Because in the end, I can't rely on her honesty, only my own. I've also realized that I'm not alone in this. Friends and family have been a huge support. They tell me I deserve better, that I should never settle for someone who lies and cheats. It's easy to forget that when you're drowning in heartbreak, but their words remind me I'm worth genuine love and respect. Sometimes just talking about it helps, even if it's uncomfortable. It's about taking the pain and turning it into something that makes me stronger. There's still a part of me that hopes I'll find someone who truly values me, who I can trust without suspicion. But I know I need to heal first, really heal. I don't want to jump into anything new before I've sorted through the mess inside my head, because if I don't, I'll just carry this baggage into my next relationship, risking repeating the same mistakes. Looking back, I see how much I've grown, even in such a short amount of time. I used to be someone who trusted blindly, who ignored the warning signs. Now I'm more cautious. I've developed a sharper sense of what I need and what I won't tolerate. I've also realized that true love isn't just about the good times, it's about honesty, loyalty, and showing up when it counts. And if someone can't give me that, then they're not worth my time or my heart. So I'm still healing, still working through the pain, but I'm also moving forward. I'm rebuilding my confidence, rediscovering who I am outside of that relationship. It's a slow process, but I know I'll get there. I've learned that life after betrayal isn't about dwelling on what was lost, but about what I can build from the wreckage. And honestly, I feel a little more hopeful now than I did a month ago. Because at the end of the day, I know I deserve better, and I'm finally starting to believe it myself. Now that I've had some time to process everything, I realize how much this whole ordeal has changed me. At first, I was just devastated, feeling betrayed and humiliated, questioning everything I thought I knew about her and about myself. But as the weeks went on, I started to see it differently. I learned that betrayal doesn't define you. What matters is how you respond to it. I could have stayed stuck in anger and resentment, but instead, I chose to focus on healing and moving forward. The truth is, I still feel pain deep down. I think I always will to some extent. But that pain has become a catalyst for growth. I've rediscovered my independence, my strength, and a new appreciation for honesty and loyalty. I've learned to trust my instincts more and to listen to that small voice inside that tells me when something's wrong. And I've come to understand that sometimes people are who they are, and no amount of love can change that. It's better to accept the truth, no matter how painful, than to live in denial. Looking back, I see how I was caught up in the idea of us, how I thought we had a future, how I convinced myself her lies were just misunderstandings. But now I see clearly. I see her for who she truly is, someone who lied, cheated, and manipulated her way through our relationship. And I see myself as someone who deserves better than that. I deserve honesty, respect, and someone who values me enough not to betray me behind my back. This experience has taught me to value myself more, to never settle for someone who doesn't treat me with the kindness and honesty I give in return. I've realized that love isn't just about the good times, it's about trust, integrity, and respect. Without those, everything else is meaningless, and I refuse to accept anything less from now on. So here I am, finally at peace with the chaos. I've let go of the anger, the hurt, and the heartbreak. I've made peace with the fact that sometimes people are just not meant to stay in your life forever. And I've learned that the best revenge is simply living well, staying true to myself, building a life I'm proud of, and never letting betrayal define me. To anyone out there going through something similar, you're not alone. It hurts, it sucks, and it's incredibly hard to move past. But in the end, it's about reclaiming your happiness, your dignity, and your sense of self. Because no matter what anyone else does, you have the power to decide your own worth. And I know now that I am worth a lot more than someone who would lie and cheat behind my back. I'm finally ready to move on, stronger, wiser, and more ready for whatever life throws next.